Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and say this right off the bat. If you cannot separate the man from the personal life, then maybe this isn't the video for you. Today's video, we will be focusing in on the ever controversial Colin Kaepernick. To see how good he actually was, we will strictly be talking about his performance on the field, as well as how long his career lasted, his accolades, and nothing outside of what he did on the field, unless it plays a factor into his game. So with that being said, since this is a controversial figure, keep an open mind. And as always, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We upload weekly content on this channel. Let's go ahead and talk about the career of Colin Kaepernick. And what better way to start than all the way at the beginning. Kaepernick was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and adopted as an infant by Rick and Teresa Kaepernick, who raised him in California. A gifted multi-sport athlete in high school, Kaepernick excelled in football, basketball, and baseball, but ultimately chose football as his true passion. From the first time he stepped onto a football field, it was clear he wasn't just any player. He was someone destined to make waves. Kaepernick's journey began in the University of Nevada, where he was originally recruited to be a safety, but fate had a different idea. When Nevada's starting quarterback went down with an injury, Kaepernick was thrust into the spotlight and seized the opportunity. In his first year as a starter, Kaepernick would throw for 2,175 yards, 19 touchdowns, but would also run for nearly 600 yards and add another 6 rushing touchdowns. He was an instant sensation, and by his sophomore year, Kaepernick had already become a household name in college football. It was during this time that the dual threat style quarterback was really rising in prominence in the NFL, and scouts would take notice. By the time the 2011 draft would approach, Kaepernick's name was on the lips of every scout and coach. His performances in college had been nothing short of spectacular, and while there were some concerns about his unconventional throwing motion and his ability to adapt to the NFL's more sophisticated defenses, Kaepernick's athleticism was just something you could not teach. In the second round, a decision would soon change the course of the franchise. The San Francisco 49ers would see something in Kaepernick and would make the decision to trade up for the man and grab him in the second round. A decision that would soon change the course of the franchise. At the time, the 49ers did have Alex Smith, but they saw the potential in Kaepernick to be more than just a backup. Little did anyone know, Kaepernick would soon explode onto the scene in a way no one could have predicted. Kaepernick's rookie season was spent primarily as a backup, and for much of the year, it seemed like he was just waiting for his opportunity, just like most rookies. If you bad quarterback play or if they get hurt, put me in, coach, let's get some experience going. And that chance came in week 10. When Smith would suffer a concussion, Kaepernick would be thrust into the starting role. And from that moment on, the 49ers would not look back. Kaepernick took over the offense with confidence, leading the Niners to a 5-2 record down the stretch and securing a playoff spot. His breakout moment did come in the 2012 divisional playoff game against the Packers. The 49ers were riding high, and with Kaepernick looking to prove himself, he would cement his name in NFL record book history. Right? NFL record book history. I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but I'm pretty sure you guys get what I'm trying to say. Cap would run for 181 yards, a record for the most rushing yards by a quarterback in a single game. Not just playoffs, in a single game period. He would do this while also tossing nearly 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. He completely dismantled the Packers' defense, and the 49ers would cruise to a 45-31 victory. That game marked a defining moment in Kaepernick's career, as he wasn't just a game-managing style quarterback, he was truly, at this point, a game changer. The Niners were headed to the NFC Championship, and it was clear Kaepernick had more than earned his place to be the team's QB1. And that was definitely something that was a bit controversial at the time, as this is when Alex Smith finally started to live up to his #1 overall pick status. But Kaepernick was just so good, and he was the hot hand, that when Smith was ready to return, they just ended up riding with Cap. Kaepernick's success did not stop against the Packers, as the Niners would storm through the NFC Championship, knocking out the Falcons to secure a spot in Super Bowl 47. Facing the Baltimore Ravens in the Har Bowl, Kaepernick would have his greatest challenge yet. While the game did start off poorly, the scriptwriters decided to cut the lights off in the Superdome to give the 49ers the adjusted script to get them to come back, and this became a game by the fourth quarter. Ultimately, the 49ers comeback would fall short as the Ravens would prevail 34-31. Despite the loss, Kaepernick at this point cemented his status as one of the NFL's brightest stars. But many would say that trip to the Super Bowl was the peak for Colin, as he would never really get that same magic really going again for the 49ers. In 2013, the Niners would go 12-4, with Kaepernick tossing nearly 3,200 pass yards, adding another 500 on the ground, 21 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, including another 4 rushing touchdowns, and the Niners would obviously make the playoffs again. This time, they would defeat the Packers again in the wild card. They would defeat the Panthers in the divisional, ultimately losing, though, to the Seahawks 23-17. And I want to say off the top of my head that this is the Crabtree-Sherman game.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get. Don't you ever talk about me.
So back-to-back years, Kaepernick has guided the 49ers into 2 deep playoff runs. So they had seen enough, and by the 2014 season, he had signed a 6-year, $126 million deal. This is where we turn to what may have actually happened. The 49ers under Alex Smith were doing more than fine. But you got to remember, Smith was really just kind of a game manager at this point. And game managers don't really win you games. They just don't lose you the games more often than not. That being said, this 49ers team was really carried by their defense. And when that defense began to crumble, by 2014, it was clear that the 49ers weren't the same team they had been just a year earlier. And with Harbaugh now a Wolverine, I cannot emphasize enough how big of a deal this actually was. The once dominant offense would struggle to find rhythm, and Kaepernick's performances would become increasingly inconsistent. By 2015, the 49ers had become a shell of their former selves. Guys, when I tell you the fall off was insane, I'm talking about smoker fall off insanity. If you guys watch One Piece, that is the fall off that Colin Kaepernick had. Sorry, I had the Zoro shirt on, so I had to bring up One Piece one time, you know? It was in this 2015 season that the former second round pick for the Niners would get benched in favor of Blaine Gabbert. Ooh, he needs his own story. Clearly, Gabbert wasn't the answer either, so the pulse on Kaepernick's time with the 49ers was still there, albeit a bit bleak. In 2016, Kaepernick would make the decision that would change the course of his life forever. In a face of widespread racial injustice and police brutality, Kaepernick would choose to take a knee during the national anthem, a peaceful protest aimed at raising awareness for the systemic racism that had long plagued America. He would explain, "I'm not going to stand up and show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and marginalizes communities." These are some powerful words, but powerful words will be very divisive. As the controversy would grow, more athletes would actually join him in protest, taking a knee during the anthem to show solidarity. The movement became bigger than football. Kaepernick's protesting would ultimately cost him his career. Now, there's something that I have said about controversial figures in the past on this channel, and that is, if you are a polarizing figure and you're not that good, at least anymore, you're not worth the headache and media storm that comes with you. And what I mean by that is, when Zeke was doing all his shenanigans this year with the Cowboys, it became stories because Zeke wasn't good anymore. When in reality, Zeke was missing practices or meetings, I should say, well before this, but because he was good, it was tolerated. Now, I'm not saying Kaepernick was bad, but he did not really match the public figure that he was becoming, if that makes any sense. It was in the 2017 offseason where Kaepernick actually decided to leave the 49ers and try to restart on a new team. But this is kind of where I said he ended his own career with his protest. No team would actually sign him. And now you can argue this all you want in the comments. I do believe the man was talented enough to at least be a backup somewhere. The man was a few years removed from leading a team to the Super Bowl, but he can't get a job at the young age that he was at the time. I do think that the NFL, or the owners at the very least, saw him as more of a distraction than the dynamic performer, so he never got his shot. Some people will argue that no, he was just bad, he was just bad. I disagree with that. Kaepernick was not as bad. He was not worse than 64 other quarterbacks. There's just no way. After not latching on to a team in 2017, Cap would ultimately file for grievances accusing owners of collusion. Ultimately, they would reach a settlement by 2019. Talks of joining the XFL would surface, but he would not sign with a team, and now rumor has it that Kaepernick was asking for an incredible $20 million per season. But the reality was the XFL in 2019 was still starting back up, and no quarterback was making really more than $200,000. So he would ultimately embrace his new political career. So to summarize this video, I do think Kaepernick is often forgotten about how good he actually was at his peak, but everything is enhanced once you put yourself in a controversial position. At the end of the day, the NFL is a business, and whether you side on one side or the other, if you are a distraction and could potentially hinder the income from coming in, I think most teams don't want to deal with that from a business perspective. Now, that's not me saying that this is how I feel, that's how I feel. That's just the reality of business. So with that being said, Kaepernick did have the potential to be someone great in this league, and he did fall off a bit of a cliff, so to speak. His last few years with the 49ers were turmoil to say the least, but if I may, I think that had to go with the entire team as a whole. Kaepernick's career numbers aren't that spectacular. He had a 28-30 record, but also did have a 4-2 playoff record. He had a total of 12,271 pass yards, a 72-30 touchdown to interception ratio, 2,300 rush yards, add on another 13 rushing touchdowns, a 59.8 completion percentage, and an 88.9 passer rating. But you can't deny what the man did in the playoffs. So that being said, if I had to give the career of Colin Kaepernick a grade, I'd have to give his career a C+. But what do you guys think? What grade would you guys give the career of Colin Kaepernick? Be sure to thumbs up this video and let me know in the comments what you are feeling about this. That's it for today's video. And until next time, love you guys. Good to be back. Shaboy!